Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan P. Butler, the author of A Saga on Home Video, second edition, A Fan's Guide to U.S. Star Wars Home Video Releases. The second edition is available now in paperback, hardback, and on Kindle through Amazon. Nice, fancy, schmancy hardbacks here. This is actually the first in a different series of videos than we usually see as part of From the Star Wars Home Video Library. As you know, we are reaching a point where new releases are kind of dwindling to the point where there really just isn't a lot being put out. For example, in 2021, I made the little joke episode here. There wasn't a single US release of a season of a Star Wars television series, or really anything for a television series on physical media, or of the films at all. The last ones had been in 2020. And there is an upcoming release soon. I'm waiting before I put in a pre-order to figure out exactly where it will be. There are trilogy sets of 4K/Blu-ray/Blu-ray bonus disc packs that were initially shown in France for April, that the Digital Bits reached out to Disney about, and they said, nope, these will be France, no plans for the US. Only now they're also showing up in Germany for pre-orders. So there's some question as to where they will actually show up, if not the United States. Definitely France, definitely Germany. But otherwise, not a lot of new releases out there for Star Wars home video. So for the most part, we're looking backwards at older stuff. We're looking at oddball items I've never deigned to cover before, like when we eventually look at things like Thumb Wars and George Lucas in Love and things like that. So I thought that alongside our top whatever episodes, like top 5 this, top 5 that kind of stuff, why not do a Q&A style of episode? Because that seemed to work well for the book Q&A stuff. So this is Q&A episode number 1 of the official line of Q&As for From the Star Wars Home Video Library. And the way that we're doing this is collecting questions, at least for this one. In the future, maybe we'll just do them from, these individual videos and the comments underneath them, whatever. But over on the Star Wars Home Video Facebook group, that is facebook.com/groups/SW Home Video. It's a group that Justin Berger founded and I helped moderate. I posted a post to basically say, hey, if you got questions, I'll answer them in a video. And I thought that might be an interesting way to sort of bring up some different discussion here on the show. So, most of the time, or maybe alternating, whatever, I'll put the posts over there in case you want to join that group and ask questions in the comments there to be able to be used here on episodes like these, or we can grab some questions from the comments in the comments for this particular episode. Bear in mind, though, that means that I can't really answer questions in the comments if I'm going to save them for a Q&A episode. So, coming from a question thread that I initially posted, I believe, on January 27, 2022, our first question comes from David Dumbbell, who says, what is your opinion on the recent trend for VHS sealed grading and the subsequent ridiculous prices? So I've addressed this recently on one of those top 5 frustrations episodes. I will say, to kind of keep it briefer here, that I am torn on this one because I am an economics teacher. So there's a part of me that's the fan going, this is ridiculous, this is stupid, why are people paying this kind of money? You should not have to pay this amount of money to be able to get whatever it is because that's not really a rare item, etc., etc. That kind of frustration. But the econ teacher in me pops up and says, no, those are emotional responses, not logical responses. And we know that when it comes to any type of product being sold on what is essentially a free market, and we'll talk about, the fact that eBay here is not only a free market, but eBay is a place where prices are not set and then sit on the shelves. Prices actually get bid up or can be dropped as a seller doesn't sell something and wants to try to sell it again. So it actually is able to fluctuate more as a free marketplace than, or at least in a more rapid pace of changing and shifting in a free marketplace than what you would see in retail stores. Because we know that there is supply and demand for particular items, and it is a free marketplace, I have a hard time saying that it shouldn't be allowed. That's a very tough line for me to cross. Because if you say it shouldn't be allowed, you're basically tossing out the idea of a free market for this stuff. If there is a market for these items, there are people who are not willing to part with them except for higher prices, right? That's where the supply line is. And there are people who are, I guess I should say like this, I don't know because it reverses the image and everything. So if I say supply and demand, it looks like this. But you have your supply line, and there are some folks who won't part with it except for higher prices. And then you have those folks who are in the demand side of things, the consumers who are willing to pay exorbitant prices for these higher end items, or what they perceive as higher end, because perception is a big part of this. So as long as there are people out there willing to buy them at that price and people willing to sell them at that price, I guess to a degree more power to them. It is a free choice type of thing. Like I could probably go out now and take this. This is a copy from, well, I guess it was from '87 of A New Hope on VHS, sealed with the original sticker still on it. If you look at what eBay says current going prices are for things like this, I could probably ask thousands for this. I'm not going to because I'm not a jackass. I don't want to do that to fellow fans. But at the same time, if I was just in the profit-making business, I wanted to sell something for more profit. Like say I was trying to pay off medical bills or something, I wanted to squeeze as much out of selling something off as possible, which I've had to do before. Then I would put it up there and just kind of whatever the market will bear. If it bids up into the thousands, it bids up into the thousands. If I put it up for thousands and nobody buys it, well, that's on me. Lower the price and try again. But the thing that gets me with this, it's not the high prices. It's really kind of two things. The things that kind of lean me in the other direction. One, I just kind of think grading VHS and any home video format for the most part is kind of stupid. I don't see the value in it myself. I can see the value in something like this is a baseball card, pristine corners and everything. It's going to be displayed, and there's an existing market for that sort of thing. There's not a functionality to it. Comic books, if you're going to just, close them up and seal them away, okay, I guess that's sort of what they're doing with the home video stuff, is to sort of seal them away. The thing about home video stuff is you never know what's inside. For all I know, the cassette inside this could be moldy. Or I could buy a mint condition, supposedly, beautiful CED of a film, and as I've seen in times before, you open up the actual CED and the vinyl disc inside is cracked and shattered. But it sure looked nice from the outside. I would think that when you're grading a comic book, there is a level of making sure the inside is pristine somehow. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that process. I know that breaking the spine is a thing. But certainly for something like a baseball card, you're looking at it from all the different angles, making sure there's no misprints and it just looks good. Like the product itself is solid. When you grade something that's in a sealed package with the interior unknown, that by definition can't be a fully accurate grade because you don't know what's inside it. So to me, it's much better for a collector's standpoint to actually know what the inside and the outside looks like, if at all possible. And there's a gamble that you're taking if you pay extra for something that's sealed because you don't know the condition of what's inside. Hell, there are people trying to do grading on things like DVDs at this point. Not just VHS, but other home media formats. Well, okay, but what if the disc is loose and it's just kind of now sort of pressed up against the edge so it doesn't sound loose when you shake it, but it could have been loose for years and moving around and scratched the hell out of this bottom surface of the DVD. That's not a mint condition DVD anymore. Are you going to grade it based on the outer packaging and the shrink wrap around it? Or are you actually going to make sure that the product that you're selling and saying is awesome actually is? So that to me is a frustration with it. But I know for some it's just about getting something sealed that looks nice, screw the insides, I'm going to put it on display. In which case that wouldn't be an issue for them. That's fine. The other side of it is, and this is the bigger issue that I have with it, is that we know there is evidence that at least some of the companies who have been doing some of this grading, or the people who then are working with those companies and then sell these online, some of the first sort of wave of a lot of this that really sort of drove the hype, was gaming the system and BS. They basically were gaming the system, whereas they were sort of driving up the prices artificially, not through just regular supply and demand, but artificially, so that then there could be a trail of people going, oh, let's see, look what the price was for this, let's raise the price as well, and so on and so on, and sort of creating that trend. So I feel like, to some degree, the trend is legitimate. There are some people who want to see the grading and see value in it, and are willing to pay higher, and others selling it totally legitimately. Totally legitimately. But there's been enough gaming of the system, particularly early on, to drive the prices up in the first place, that you have essentially a tainted market here. And that is my thing. I am all for, if you want to sell something, as long as it's not illegal, sell it. If you want to buy something, as long as it's not illegal, buy it. Get together, market transaction, have at it. That's what capitalism is. But it needs to be a free and fair exchange, right? A free and fair marketplace. the fairness and to a degree some of the freedom of it is removed when you have it artificially being gamed to artificially drive up the prices. And this is not price gouging. Price gouging is a different thing. And there's a whole moral debate on the whole issue of price gouging versus what economics says about it in situations with low supply and shortage and stuff like that, or I guess low quantity supplied and shortages like that. That's a whole other topic. But this isn't price gouging per se. It's artificial rigging and gaming of the prices to try to create a follow-on effect of raising those prices, which is a little bit of a different thing. So yeah, so as long as it's, fair transactions, okay, I don't see a value in it. I'm not going to buy grading stuff. I'm not going to take my stuff to get graded. I don't care. But some people do, and that's fine. I won't get my comics graded, or, I don't see the value in, trading cards being graded myself because I just don't collect the stuff that way. There are people who grade video games that are sealed. That's just not my thing. Doesn't mean it can't be somebody else's thing, though. So we have to make sure that our emotional reaction to something and saying, well, I would never do that, I don't like this, I don't prefer this, creates a stance in which we say somebody else can't, right? Because that is one big thing going on in modern society right now, right? My personal taste, my personal preferences, my personal views must dictate how you live, what you do. And that's just not the right mindset to have, at least not in a relatively free society. So, yeah. R. Marvin Christiansen asks, what is your favorite personal Star Wars home video hunting story? So I thought about this once I saw that question to figure out which it would be. I'm torn between a few, so I'll give you some quick snippets of 3. And it depends on your point of view. So on the one hand, there's one that I don't think would probably count. And that is my ongoing hunt for things like Star Wars Video 2000 releases from the UK. Or that's V2000, Video 2000, VCC, is all different names for the same type of cassette. Stuff like this, right? Video 2000 cassettes, those things. Or my hunt for some extremely rare variants of things like the Clone Wars: A Galaxy Divided Toys R Us exclusive version, which seems to be by far the rarest of them, when we thought Best Buy and their version was, pretty bad rarity-wise, at least these days. But the thing is, my hunt for those was shockingly easy, it turned out. It was hard, almost impossible for years, and then I get an email from a viewer, Matt Fry, who has this big collection, and is like, you know what, I'm going to get rid of some of it, if not all of it. I'm going to just pass along this stuff. It seems as though you could really make use of some of this stuff. I'd like to get it to someone who could use it. If you'll pay the cost of shipping, I'll ship it all to you. Boxes and boxes of stuff showed up, including stuff that I had had an incredibly difficult time finding myself, like V2000 releases. All the V2000s I have are thanks to Matt Fry. This, thanks to Matt Fry. And quite a bit more. And then that enabled me, and Arnar knows this very well, that enabled me to do what the Star Wars Home Video Facebook group refers to now as ButlerCon, which is basically me saying, okay, I've gone through all this stuff. I know what I need. I know what I'm keeping. I know what I'm not keeping. I've swapped out some stuff that I already had for some better condition copies, but now that makes my older ones that I originally had up for grabs as well. Here's giant boxes of stuff. Have at it. Tell me what you need. I'll send it to you for the cost of shipping. I did that thing to sort of pay it forward for what Matt did for me. And that was a great experience. It allowed me to get stuff into my collection I hadn't expected to be able to get my hands on, or had extreme trouble finding before. That became incredibly easy because it was just part of the collection that he handed off to me. It also allowed me to improve the quality of some of the items already in my collection and help others in the community and sort of set a precedent for us hopefully doing that again in 2022, though not nearly as big. So I don't know if you call that a hunt. I think it's sort of part of the hunt because it was the end of the hunt for some of those V2000s or the Toys R Us, Clone Wars: A Galaxy Divided thing. But that, it was just a great experience. I'm experiencing the generosity of Matt, and then being able to sort of pay that forward to the community, and seeing how that sort of raised the spirits in some cases of the community and so on. That was a great, albeit logistically taxing experience. But I don't know if that counts as a hunt. a second story, and he asked for favorite stories. Doesn't necessarily mean it was a good one, but a favorite one. And that is the eventual hunt for Video 8 Star Wars releases. The one here from the UK for Jedi, and the ones for the original trilogy from Japan. Again, a Video 8 being a small cassette like this. If you follow the show, then you probably recall the story behind the Japanese Video 8s. And there's actually a story behind either one. And both relied on others kind of helping spot things, and some luck, but also some bad luck in the case of what happened with the Japanese ones. So the Japanese story basically starts with Jeremy Goss spotting them on eBay from a seller in Japan, me jumping on immediately and grabbing them, working with that seller to try to set up shipping, decided to go through DHL or FedEx, decided to go through DHL so that it wasn't through like regular mail, so it'd get here faster supposedly, and DHL had been pretty good about deliveries for Amazon Japan. And then once it was on the way, DHL completely dropped the ball. Absolutely dropped the ball. This was when they had the day where they claimed it had been delivered, but it had not. But depending on which tracking stuff you looked at, it had actually gone back to their warehouse, which is up by the Atlanta airport, the main Atlanta, the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta. And me having to be on the phone with them constantly, to the point where eventually I had to go up there in person, sitting around for like an hour or two with my wife and son sitting out in the car waiting for me, until eventually, finally, I was able to get a hold of a supervisor there who was like, oh, we actually do have it, we'll have it to you immediately, and getting it to me. But if not for that one supervisor, they were still claiming, no, it says it's been delivered, we don't know where it is, even though you can look on the tracking and see that even though it's been marked as delivered, the last place it went was back to that distribution hub. So DHL completely dropped the ball on that, except for one person, hallelujah, who saved the day on it. Because this was not a matter of something where it was just like, oh, it was lost, Amazon Japan send me a replacement for this new release. This was incredibly rare Star Wars items I probably would not have been able to find again, especially not together, that just seemed like they had disappeared into the ether. I was pissed. But the day was saved, and I was able to finally bring them into the collection, put them in the book, and so on. So that was not a fun story, certainly. It was incredibly frustrating, but, you know, thank goodness for Jeremy spotting it in the first place. Thank goodness for that one person at DHL. They got into my hands. And this was after years and years and years and years of searching and kind of making it known that I was searching for those. The flip side of that is the one from the UK. This is actually something I got from Matt from TechMoan. TechMoan is actually the place where most folks, including myself, learned a lot about Video 8 back in the day. They had a great video on the format, and one of the things they used as an example product was this out of the UK. And there had come a point where people were pushing me like, well, why don't you just, reach out and ask, see if he's willing to sell it. And I did. And actually, it turned out that some others in the community, like Matthew Hardesty, also did to ask about it. So probably like, why am I being bombarded from multiple directions? And I hadn't heard anything. And I figured, okay, it's not going to happen. And I shouldn't have expected a response unless the response was yes, because people who run websites, people who have YouTube channels, we get a lot of emails and we get a lot of comments and stuff that just don't bear responding to sometimes. And something like, hey, I saw this thing of yours, I want it, how much? That is the kind of email that, depending on how it is taken by the recipient, is probably going to be one that's ignored and you just hit delete. But then it turned out, quite a while later, all of a sudden here pops up, Matt, hey, I'm responding to your email now. I wasn't sure where it was originally. I know where it is now. If you're interested, here you go. So that was a case of sort of persistence and patience and the kindness of a fellow YouTuber. And kind of the fun instance of, there have been people who have gotten stuff from me that I've shown on the show before. Like, I showed something and it turns out I get like a replacement copy that's even better condition. That original one that I showed goes into my stack to sell off or to trade or to give away or whatever. Somebody gets that in their hands and they've expressed, hey, this is kind of cool. This is a show-used item. or when I was selling off my Star Wars book and comic collection for the most part. I kept some, but most I sold off. A lot of that stuff was used for the Star Wars Timeline Gold, so a lot of folks who were following the timeline were like, this is cool. It's an actual timeline used item. Well, for me, it's kind of the same thing, right? This is the item that was in that TechMoan video that allowed me to initially learn a bit more about Video 8 back in the day when I was first delving into getting interested in finding anything on the format. So a cool little synergy to go along with that one. The other story, and this is more of a hunt story. That was sort of a hunt and how it ended. This is more of the actual hunt story, is with the Black Border releases. And the Black Border releases in the US were a shit show, to put it mildly. Before these, which are the Ultimate Collector's Editions that are neither Ultimate nor a Collector's Edition, that include the 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray disc, the Blu-ray film disc and Blu-ray bonus disc, and a digital code, which were released alongside The Rise of Skywalker in 2020. We had the releases in late 2019 that were the first time that episodes 1 through 6 were put out on physical media by Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment, and created a matching set with the other films that were out at the time, which didn't include Rise of Skywalker, so there were 10 live-action films at the time. And this was one of our early instances of a release just not being announced. At all. You had places like the Digital Bits and all these different websites posting about how, you know, we see these listings. There are listings for these products. They should exist. Same thing like what's happening with those French and now German trilogy sets in April 2022 that are coming. Just no fanfare, no official announcement whatsoever. They just start showing up in listings. So we don't know what's going on with it. We don't know when they're coming. We have different instances of websites saying, as far as we can tell, this is the release date that's listed. But it was weird because it was on a weekend, not on a Tuesday, which is usually when new releases come out in the US. We don't know. We think they're coming. You might be on the lookout for them. That's the best anybody could really do. So on the day when we thought the release was happening, I was like, you know what? Here we go. So we're all taken care of here at home, all squared away so I can go out on my own to do this. And I wound up going to multiple retailers hunting these down. And there was like a Target that had some of them, a Best Buy that had some of them. Over and over again, going to these different stores, piecemeal, finding the 10 DVD releases from that day and the 10 multi-screen edition Blu-ray / digital code copies from that day. And you may remember, these are just one film disc, right? Because there wasn't a bonus disc for the individual versions of 1 through 6 until these. And they did also do it as a single disc thing, even for the stuff that had already been released through Disney. But it took, you know, the better part of a day to gather up all 20 of those. And I told the story of the hunt for those and how big of a pain in the ass it was that morning. And yet kind of a thrill of the hunt kind of thing, to be able to find them and be able to show them. Because one thing I really, really like is not just finding it for myself. It's finding something, particularly something that was either unknown within the Star Wars Home Video Facebook group community, or something that was maybe suspected or rumored that needs confirmation, and being able to find that to do the confirming, and then sharing that knowledge with others, helping others figure out what really is out there so they can go on the hunt themselves as well, kind of unleashing the hounds, so to speak. And of course that was followed up by the Walmart exclusive versions of them, which came with the little sticker on them and had the little concept art piece. And of course that was when they put out the original trilogy first, and the other 5 came later, and some Walmarts got none, some Walmarts got some. Those that got some usually didn't get every one of the films. Those that got most of the films only got a couple copies of each, and it was just a freaking nightmare to find these, again, unannounced items coming out in the weeks that followed the original September 2019 release of those other 2 original Black Border releases over here. But thankfully in that case, it was the keen eyes of other collectors spotting things that were out there, and the help of other collectors in other parts of the country picking up stuff for each other and sharing them and trading them and you know, just like, here, I'll pick it up for you, you pay me back kind of stuff, that finally allowed me to get all those into my hands, and others as well. So in that sense, there was a thrill to it of confirmation of, ooh, it's a mystery, let's go figure it out. And then it was the anxiety of being able to pick them all up later on. I still say that is one of the biggest dropped balls in the history of Star Wars home video, at least when it comes to publicity of new releases. And the way they handled the releases over here versus in other parts of the world has led to a lot of confusion about what's in what, because, you know, if you got these, it's the 2011 cut of the film without McClunky. If you got this or the Skywalker Saga box set, it's the McClunky version. And the digital codes originally gave you the 2015 digital version, but now give you the 2019 cut from Disney Plus that originally hit home video in 2020. It's kind of a nightmare scenario after the fact. But at the time, the hunt itself, as frustrating as it was, there's a thrill to being able to hunt and find. Hunt and not finding is a different story because it just leaves you frustrated. But hunting and finding gives you that thrill of finding it, being able to share in like the triumph of the moment, the little victories, so to speak, that help keep the collecting spirit alive. So those are the three that stood out to me, but I wasn't quite sure which ones would count. I know that last one counts as a hunt. Not sure if the other two count as hunts, but hopefully that fills the appetite for hunting stories. Although most of the time, if there's something that really had much of a hunt involved, I've covered it in the episode on that product, including these in more detail than I just did here to sort of condense things. The next question comes from Joe Belich. I'm not sure if this counted as a question for this, but I'm going to answer it here anyway. He said, have you considered doing a live stream of your Q&As or watch parties for watching any Star Wars content? Or has this been already done through trial and error to not wanting to do it because it wasn't a positive experience? So basically, the main reason I don't do anything like that is because of just not knowing when I'm going to be able to record at any given time. It's a tricky thing. You also have the fact that, and this is, you know, kind of just a me thing. So I'm someone who has IBS, irritable bowel syndrome and stuff like that. So one of the problems for me is being able to sit in one place and do something at one time. Like this video you're watching here has been recorded in 3 snippets with breaks in between because of my stomach. But you wouldn't know that by watching the video. But if this was, of course, a live stream, I'd have to step away. Also, my 3-year-old is typically with me all the time, just about all the time. So it's difficult to do any type of stream knowing I don't know when I'm going to need to go to him. We don't want to necessarily have him on the stream with me. And if so, how does that actually wind up working? The closest thing I found is being able, when he is kind of off camera, away from like this little area, is to do live streams of video games as I'm playing, initially on the PS4, then on the PS5, so that then basically I can be playing a game, we can have a conversation running in the chat for the game, and have a chance to do Q&As and just all kinds of like, you know, fun little conversations. We did that with Battlefront 2 quite a bit. I think it was Battlefront 2, I don't know if it was Battlefront 1 or not, but did some Battlefront live stream stuff for quite a while, actually. I haven't done that very much since my son was born, though. Because of just the nature of trying to pull something like that off. And actually right now, I'm curious, maybe somebody has a solution for this for me. So when I played on the PS4 and did live streams, to be able to have that interaction, I was able to keep up with the comments because there is one of the different ways that you can set up the screen when you're streaming on PS4, basically, is that you've got your main screen of the game, but then instead of having you just like up in the corner or something within that main screen, you have a little bar at the bottom, I think there's a bar at the top, but then there's sort of a side section that's just a column that has your image, in my case the way I set it up was up at the top, showing just kind of the area that the camera is shooting for. But then underneath it you have a running, you know, chat. Now granted you can't turn around and reverse the chat, so if you miss seeing something you just missed it. But that was a way to keep up with it without having to have my computer sitting in front of me to follow the YouTube chat itself, because it was streamed to YouTube through the PS4, and it was pulling the chat and putting it there alongside the stream. When I try that with PlayStation 5, I don't see an option to do it like that. There are ways to basically like position where your face is, and whether it's a circle or a square or what it is around you, so you're not blocking much of the screen, and you can tell it where to put the chat text, but it's like it pops up and then it's gone. It pops up and then it's gone. As opposed to being something where you could see it for a few seconds until somebody else makes a comment that makes it kind of go away as it scrolls, which makes it very difficult to follow comments as you're playing a game on a live stream to do that sort of thing. I've actually considered doing that with the PS5 with Squadrons, just to finally get me through Squadrons, because I just have not had the impetus to get through the thing. just isn't grabbing me. I like starfighter combat stuff in Star Wars, but unless I'm doing VR, which I don't have set up right now anymore for PSVR just because of lack of space, or I'm playing something where you can be outside the ship, just doesn't grab me. Inside the ship, but on a TV screen, just doesn't grab me. But it's just one of those things where I need to find a way to make it work in a way that's going to make the chat more viable, because that's what I really enjoy about doing the streams. It's not so much about, hey, look at the game, or here's my thoughts on the game. It's more about the conversation that's going on there. So I really enjoy doing those. I just don't see it for a Q&A like this, and it's not something that happens very often anymore because of having a toddler and the limitations of the streaming setup that I've found, at least on PS5, and the fact that I can't sit still in one place necessarily for very long a lot of times. So I don't think it's going to happen. I think doing the Q&As with questions from comments, either on Facebook or on YouTube, is probably going to be the way that it will continue, if we continue doing these. Next question comes from Danny Katzel, who says, when you want to watch what is now known as Episode 4, which version/format do you play? It's one or the other of either this, if I'm going to play it on our big 4K television, or typically it's streaming through Disney Plus, or streaming through one of the streaming services that I own it through, like through Movies Anywhere or something, but either way it's the same cut of the film. The reason why it's always the McClunky edition is that, to me, I've sort of grown to live with the different changes made to the films over time. I want the best picture and sound quality for that experience, because I don't watch them terribly often. As I suddenly turn on my work computer by tapping it that I didn't even realize was still on over here. It's still on. So for me, even if I wanted to have it without the various special edition tweaks and whatnot and the stuff that's come since then, there aren't official releases of that quality level of picture and sound that I would like to see, so I go for the newer cuts. I know that there are options out there like Harmy's Despecialized Editions, 4K 77. Those typically aren't things that I've taken the time to download for the most part. Not something I'm going to buy and perpetuate the idea of buying those when they should not be sold. So it's just not a thing typically for me. Like, usually it's like, oh, okay, I'll just pop it on my phone or something and watch it on an iPad and watch it while I'm doing something else. Or I'm going to sit down and actually watch it. If I'm going to watch it, I'm going to play on the big 4K screen. Now, that is assuming we're talking about one of the ones that don't have a 3D release. If it's the Disney era films and I have just full control and I can just watch it whatever way I want uninterrupted, it's just me sitting down and watching the film, 3D Blu-ray every single time. Typically through the 3D TV, the little small PlayStation 3D TV that I have in my office, or when I have it set up, I can do it through the PlayStation VR, but I find that just slipping away in my office, turning off the lights, turning on the TV, popping on the active glasses, really enjoyable. But obviously you can't do that for A New Hope, and that question was specifically about Episode 4, so take or leave that last little section there. And then the last question is one that's kind of specific to products, specific to home video products, that is. And Stuart Phillips says, or asks, in 1985, A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back were released on CAV Laserdisc, that is Standard Play Laserdisc. That is for the first time, by the way. Does this release of A New Hope feature C-3PO's tractor beam line, or is the audio the same as a 1982 release? Now, there was an ongoing conversation after that, in which Rolanda Shaniqua, who is one of our very knowledgeable members of the Star Wars Home Video group that I don't think has asked questions or anything before like that would ever have been mentioned on the show, but we had a lot of really, really knowledgeable members over there. She's one of them, particularly on the earlier stuff, it seems like. Said the revised soundtrack with C-3PO's line was created in 85, so that's a tough one without actually checking. Factoring in the Laserdisc production and printing time, I would lean towards the 1985 A New Hope Laserdisc having the pre-85 soundtrack, to which Stewart replied, I read it was created in 1985 too, but the first VHS that says digitally mastered featuring the tractor beam line states packaging copyright 1984, but no indication of which year it was first released in. So I wanted to add that little bit there because it helps give context to what we're going to talk about here, and I said, kind of tongue-in-cheek that, I've got the answer, I'll just wait for the show because it was specifically on that thread. So, on VHS, as mentioned, it's easy to tell which ones don't have the line and which ones do. The ones that don't have the line, and we're talking about like pre-THX Remastered Edition, pre-Definitive Collection stuff. So we're talking like 1982 initial releases of A New Hope, basically up through basically 1992. Those VHS releases in that second box set with Fox Video and all. At least in the US, it was the second box set. In that era, if it's a drawer box from 82-ish, 82, 83, yeah, that's not going to have the line because it was not in the original stereo mix that was then used to make those, despite being replaced in theaters in later stereo mixes. You know, it just wasn't a thing. And then eventually, of course, we will see with the THX Remastered Edition, Definitive Collection stuff, the line is missing again until it comes back with the special editions. So you've got sort of that little gap there. What about the ones in between the drawer boxes and later? Well, we know that it was fixed in the mid-80s, so we can assume, correctly, that the 1990 and 1992 releases in different packaging, those have the line. The question is, what about the ones that have this style of cover art in a slim case for VHS? Okay, this one is from 1984. Okay, this is before Ben Burtt went in and redid the audio mix, digitally remastered it so that you can, or I guess digitally mastered it, so that he was able to reinsert C-3PO's missing line. This is from 84. Notice in the corner, Hi-Fi Stereo doesn't say digitally mastered. Notice on the side as it tries to fall out here, Hi-Fi Stereo, nothing about digitally mastered on either side. And yes, copyright on the back, and you can just barely see it, 84, but it does say packaging copyright 1984. That is something that was a little bit frustrating in the early days of a lot of Star Wars releases, particularly on VHS, because you'd a lot of times have a copyright date based on the packaging design, not, or something about the packaging design, not the item inside. For example, the 1990 CBS Fox box set, a lot of folks still claim is from 1988. Well, no, it's not. It's from 1990, but it uses the Star Wars Trilogy logo and terminology. That's what's copyright 88 from the earlier set with the little paper band around it in 88. If you actually look at the copyright on the 1990 set, it says 88 for Star Wars Trilogy. Keep looking, it'll then say 1990 to refer to the set itself. So that packaging copyright thing can sometimes be a pain in the ass. But this is 84. Ben Burtt then goes in 1985, does the remastering, and subsequent releases before the packaging then changes heading into 1990 look like this. This is one from 87, but 86 essentially looks the same way. Those are marked digitally mastered here. Those are marked digitally mastered here and over here. You can't really see the CBS Fox thing here. And yes, though, packaging copyright still says 1984. So, you've got different versions of A New Hope. The ways to tell them apart, if you're looking at, for instance, 1986, 87, going into 88, basically it's, is there a trilogy trailer at the end with an opening that basically just is over a black screen, like a little opening narration? Is there a trilogy trailer at the beginning with a little X-Wing flying and a 10th anniversary logo to lead into that same trailer? That'll tell you whether it's an earlier printing or a later printing within that era. If you're looking for 88, you'll find a little holographic dot like up here in this section, as opposed to not having one like you see here. Sealed ones from 87, many of them with that sticker on it. But the key distinction of does it have C-3PO's line or not all comes down to something much easier to spot that you can actually spot from the packaging, from the front. No digitally mastered, missing the line. Digitally mastered, has it. And the dividing line is 85. 84 release does not. 86 onward, at least until the THX Remastered stuff, does. 85 did not have a VHS release. Therefore, we don't have to worry about what happened that specific year. That was when he was working on it. But that begs the question that he asked up front here, which is, what about the Laserdiscs that were in 85? That's not, oh, it's the year before, oh, it's the year after. It's the year that the work was being done on the remastering, so do they have it or not? So let's pick it up from the end and work towards the middle again. We know that in 93/94, while the Definitive Collection was on the market, having come out in 93, before it became the THX Remastered Edition in 95, where we saw the audio remixing that lost 3PO's line again, we had in 93 and 94 the Technodisc pressing, right, made in USA, the Technodisc version of the special widescreen edition of A New Hope, marked as Fox Video. That's the one that corrected the aspect ratio issue of Among others, in 1992, the other Fox Video version, this one put out through Mitsubishi. Also in 92, the last time they tried to push on us a full-screen, time-compressed version of A New Hope, digital sound in the corner. That was preceded, of course, in 89 by the CBS Fox version of the special widescreen edition pressed by Pioneer. Now, all of those have the C-3PO line, right? And for those who don't know what we're talking about, the C-3PO line, that explains like how the tractor beam actually works. It's missing in some versions of the film. It's there in others. In the ones that it's missing, the characters just look at the screen like, It's the thing about, a power loss at one of the terminals will allow the ship to leave, etc., etc. That line is missing in some versions, particularly the early ones and the THX era ones. Before that, jump back to 82, going into 82, 83, and you had the original release through 20th Century Fox Video of A New Hope, and then you also have the one with CBS Fox from 83 that followed it up. Those don't have the line. But all of that should be taken as a given because we know the change was made in 85. There's only one release in between the two ends we just looked at, and that's actually in 85. And unlike most Star Wars Laserdisc releases, in fact, unlike any preceding it, this one was CAV standard play, non-time compressed Laserdisc. Multiple discs, really nice features because it was CAV, but more expensive, more discs. The question is, does it have the line on it? This is the one we're talking about here from 85. Okay? Stereo, standard play, CAV, surround sound, but doesn't say anything about digital sound on this one. This is the one that, if you recall, has the wrong runtime on it. Even though the runtime was not time compressed, it actually says the time compressed runtime like the other ones did. So they screwed that up. Probably when they were just tweaking an existing packaging style to get the new version for standard play. So I went through and checked this out a long time ago, and I have an answer, but I went through and double-checked it last night just to make sure I wasn't going crazy. For some reason, the presence or lack of a C-3PO line on Laserdiscs is something that always, it's like, I know it, I'm sure, and then as soon as I'm asked about it, I'm like, I'm not actually sure anymore. And I check it again, which may just be my brain giving me an excuse to pop in a Laserdisc every now and then. But the answer is, apparently the 1985 Laserdiscs, as Rolanda suggested, they must have been being produced around the same time that Ben Burtt was doing the process of remastering. So they do not, despite being, a different authoring of a disc because it's CAV, they do not include C-3PO's line about the tractor beam. They are among those for which it is missing because it is based on the earliest, or some of the earliest, stereo versions from theaters before the line was fixed, and too early, apparently, to have the line fixed through Ben Burtt's remastering. We would only see that starting in 89 when it comes to the Laserdiscs with the special widescreen edition. So that's your answer there. No, it does not. No, it does not. A long-winded answer, but I want to give fun context here because this is supposed to be a show about the home video stuff. I like to show the items as much as I can. But yes, that answers the question here. So if you want the first instance of it actually appearing on a release, you're going to want the digitally remastered audio version, or digitally mastered audio version of A New Hope from 86 on VHS or on beta. There was a beta equivalent release as well, also marked digitally mastered and so on. But the question was about VHS and Laserdisc specifically. And that does it for the questions asked in that thread. So I will probably post another of those sometime soon, probably once this episode is up. I may even ask to just put it in the comments of this, depending on how I word it on the site. If you want to ask any questions for a future Q&A of this type here on YouTube, feel free to put questions in the comments of this video, and I'll grab them for the next one. But it may be grabbing them plus ones from Facebook, depends on how many questions they are, and depending on when I get a chance to record another one of these. But I just thought it'd be a fun new format to add into the mix to allow questions to be asked and answered, not just in the comments, but here, as long as they're apropos from the Star Wars Home Video Library. If you want to ask basically any questions, as long as it's not putting my marriage or career at risk, some broader questions like, what do you think of Visions? Or what do you think of Book of Boba Fett? What do you think of this Marvel thing? What do you think of this, that, the other? And so on and so on. What about teaching? What about VR? What about board gaming? Whatever. then you can join the Patreon, patreon.com/NathanPButler, become a member of the Nobility of the Butleriverse. They get an exclusive Q&A video every single month where I answer the questions that come just from that group of supporters. But with that, we'll wrap up this Q&A episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers.